Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool to find the right size for your digging project. Visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. Making our way through another episode.
Well, Joey.
Yes.
I know that you like being thrifty.
Uh-huh.
And I like being thrifty.
Right.
So what's the thriftiest thing that's going to happen right now, or soon, very soon, within the next month, that you can add to your garden?
It's going to be the leaves that fall from the trees. The trees pick up a lot of the minerals and nutrients in the soil, put them in the leaves, and then at the time of fall, they fall, and you can incorporate them into your yard and your garden. A couple of ways in which we can do it. There are some tree leaves that you don't want to include into your garden. However, there are some ways in which we want to do this, and some ways that we have done it in the past that has worked very, very well for us. First off, if you are wanting to maintain a beautiful lawn and you don't want to rake the leaves up and you're not going to put them on your edible garden beds, simply mulch them with your lawnmower. It breaks them up, it falls between the grass, and it will break down and feed the soil. Easy way. You don't need to rake them up and take them to the curb and let somebody else deal with them. Just let them break down in your yard, and they'll work just fine.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a good option. So there's a few different things you can do with the leaves. You can insulate if you have any sort of tender plants. And a lot of times people will do this with not just edibles, but with like roses, other possible, we got a question about, what was that tree? Oh, okay. Anyway, so you can do this with other.
Well, if you do this around a plant, such as a rose bush or a tree, you'd want to create a cage around it, like with a chicken wire or tightly squared fencing of some sort to keep the leaves contained next to the plant to add,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I'm saying is it helps. You could put it on the base of the plant. Same thing with, carrots. And we talked about carrots and how a few weeks ago about how carrots, you can leave them in the ground until you're ready to harvest, and you would put leaves over them. And then kale, leeks, and beets are all good options for that.
And when we talk about covering them, we're not talking about a few inches. We're talking several feet of a mountain of leaves to keep the soil frigid but not frozen, and keep the vegetables alive but not growing.
Right. And then you can use these to boost your compost pile. Maybe you've covered all your garden, all your soil, and you have extra, you can add them to your compost pile. And
there's nothing wrong with taking a corner out of the garden or the yard and just piling them up, because leaves are very important in the spring. You can use them as a mulch. You can use them as soil amending. There's a lot of different things in which you can use leaves for, instead of putting them on the curb or taking the time and mulching them and taking them to the curb for somebody else to pick up. Utilize them on your property. Now, some of you may have very large properties which you are able to access leaves many portions of the year because you're in a wooded area, or you've backed the mulcher up and you just continue to unload loads of mulched leaves year after year, and you've got decades built up there, and it's a phenomenal free resource that you can use to feed your soil.
Right. Yep. And definitely is a free resource. Now, one thing you can also do, and we don't really talk about this, but you can make leaf mold. So what you would do is, if you don't, you can shred them to do this, but you don't have to, and you just rake the leaves into a big pile. And what will happen is they'll make this, after 1 to 3 years, the fungus will break them down, and then it turns into a leaf mold. So you have to choose a designated spot to put them. But after a few years, they would break down 1 to 3 years.
Well, the smaller the particles of the leaf, the quicker it breaks down. Just like the compost, the smaller the particles in the compost pile is, the quicker the microbial life can break it down. However, in our past, whenever we had the in-ground garden, we had about 1,800 square feet, and we would scrounge and scavenge the leaves, not only on the property, but across the street, and about a block for each side of the house, and on the front, on both sides. And a couple of, what it was 2016 or 17, we brought in 72 44-gallon trash can fulls, and it figured out to be a little over a ton of leaves. And then the next year we brought in fewer leaves because time of the restriction. But we didn't mulch these.
Right.
We would mulch some of them, but the majority of them, we just got them off the street, got them out of the yard, and dumped them over the grow beds. And at the time, which this would have been October, early November, we would mound them up 2.5, 3 foot tall on some grow beds. This can be the same, and we will do this on our raised beds that we created this year. But by the time spring comes along, that 2.5 or 3, let's just 3 foot to make it easy math, has reduced by about 80%. It's about 10 inches high. And then you just move the leaves back if you're planting starts, and then you can bring that mulch back around the start plants if you're doing kale or broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, whatever. But if you're doing like direct sowing, you can remove and pull it back, let those plants grow. And then if it is a plant in which you can tuck the leaves back around, you can, or you can utilize those leaves somewhere else. Now, some people will put them on their lawn or put them on their garden in full size or shredded, and then they will till them in. We're not a big advocate of tillage. However, if that is what works for you and has worked for you for many, many years, so be it. Go for it. Keep going with it. But we just lay the leaves on. And when we do what I just described, we laid those leaves on and piled them 3 foot high, and they broke down. And by springtime, they were about 10-inch high mound. By June, if you walked in our garden, you couldn't tell that we had brought a single leaf in that fall because they've all broke down. The microbial life, the worms, all of that stuff has has broke them down. When those leaves are mounded up, we can break the leaves back and we can see the worms scurry because they're all up on top of the soil, feeding off of those leaves and taking them down and doing their thing under the soil. So it's a very beneficial, free resource that we can utilize each year. And it seems like a daunting task, but if we can just get them mounded in the garden, put them somewhere, and then we can do a little bit at a time. With our situation in the city is we're fighting the municipality that comes across every X amount of days and sweeps up all the leaves that all the neighbors have put on the street curb or in the gutter to get away. So we have to scurry in there and pull all those back out. We've never had an issue at all. The neighbors don't. I mean, maybe they think we're crazy and they just leave us alone. I'm not sure.
I don't think they really care. They might not even notice.
No, and you know, the neighbor directly left of us when you're standing in the backyard, we rake a lot of the leaves out of his front yard because they're big, thick oak leaves.
Yeah.
And I don't think people are too upset when somebody else is doing some of the work for them.
Right.
So that's how we utilize our leaves. And a lot of great benefits to the leaves. Some people will bag them and put them in the corner of a shed or a garage or in the back, and then they'll take those bags and utilize them in the springtime and reduce the amount of moundage. They just pack them in a bag, a paper bag.
Right. So anyway, back to leaf mold.
Yes.
Leaf mold actually does have a purpose. So once it breaks down, say if you let that break down.
No, first of all, we're putting it like in a trash bag, right? And we're sealing it up.
No, you just make a pile.
Or we can do it out in the open.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it takes a year or so to break down. And then after it makes that leaf mold, it's high in calcium and magnesium, and it retains 3 to 5 times its weight in water. So it's almost like a peat moss. That peat moss that has that weight, it's like that. That's
okay.
like the sponginess.
Right.
Yeah. So
and when you pull that pile apart and you see those white little stringy things, that is the fungi. That's the good bacteria. That's what you want to see.
Right. Yeah. And that's what's all beneficial.
Yes.
Yes. So that's an idea if you're like, okay, I have a bunch of leaves. I only have so much garden. I only have so big of a compost space.
I only have so much time.
I only have so much time. You can let, time's going to pass anyway. So you can let yourself make some leaf mold.
So if we don't have a leaf mulcher or a device in order, like a commercial device that's designed to suck the leaves up and mulch them, you can use a lawnmower with a bagger. It does work. You do lose a certain percentile of those, the leaves, but it works very, very well. And then the benefit to doing that, like if you're going across the front yard, you're sucking the leaves up and they're going in the bag, you're going to get a little grass in there too. So it kind of has a little ratio of greens to browns and kind of helps the breakdown process a little bit, even though you're mounding it over the grow bed. So not a bad thing. It's totally okay to do that. Though the lawnmower is not quote unquote designed to do that, it works quite well.
So one thing to keep in mind is that there's some different leaves that could inhibit growth, and that includes walnuts, eucalyptus, and camphor laurel. And you don't want to put these, so you would want to compost them first, and then you could put them in your garden.
Okay, so we want to be aware of that.
And another thing is that if you are using something like oak leaves, you would want to, oak leaves are very thick and almost kind of like waterproofish. So if you only have oak leaves, you
giant
want to,
pieces of paper is what they're
right.
Yeah.
If you only have oak leaves, you might want to shred them, but also take some sort of other organic matter and kind of mix it in before you put them on your garden, because otherwise they create like almost like a barrier, like a water barrier.
Inhibits the water from penetrating because of the density and the size in which they are. So some things to know about leaves that you may not have known, and maybe you are a new gardener and you're listening to this type of programming for the first time because you've never done it before. Leaves are a great resource. If you go to our website, don't let the name fool you. It's the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, and in the search bar on the upper right-hand side, just put in fall leaves, and you're going to get a bunch of videos that will instruct you and show you how we do it. Or you can go to our YouTube channel, The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener, and we've got 1,700 videos there, and a bunch of them are about leaves and the importance of leaves and how to utilize leaves in your garden for the best results next year. Gardeners are always planning ahead, just like farmers. You got to plan several steps ahead or several seasons ahead in order to reap the rewards in which you hope to seek. And that's what we do with the leaves.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.